Most people think that tape just makes things warmer, but that's not entirely why I use it. Today I'm going to be showing you 7 creative ways that I use tape in my studio. Now, if you think tape is just about adding warmth, then you are missing the best part. So we're going to be talking about everything from subtle glue to completely blowing out tracks, tape flanges, pitching, all that kind of stuff. And honestly, the last one has completely changed the way that I produce music. Now, the first creative way I absolutely love to use my tape machine is with bussing. You're probably familiar with bussing. If you're not, it's when we take 2 or more tracks and we process them together. And then that kind of helps give a more cohesive mix between those instruments. Now, you can do this digitally and that's great, but there is something very special about bussing things to tape, and it adds a really cool texture and glue to the mix. Now, tape machines aren't just tape. They have preamps, they have transformers, and all of these stages add character to the sound. In particular, the preamps can sound amazing. You can run mics through it, you can run instruments through it, and it will sound totally different than your interface. But you don't necessarily have to stick to the rules on this. This is technically the wrong way to use this machine, but that's pretty much exactly why I like it. So what's happening here is the mic input is expecting a very low level signal. The guitar's pickups are much hotter, so instead of getting clean amplification, we're basically getting analog fuzz. Now, you've probably heard of delay, and you may have heard of tape delay, but did you know tape delays actually come from tape? The reason is because there is a physical distance between the record head and the playback head. So as the tape is moving through the machine, it reaches the record head, and then fractions of a second later, you reach the playback head, and that physical distance is actually what creates the delay. And you can change the timing of this simply just by changing the tape speed. Now, if you have a mixer with an effect send, you can send part of your signal to the tape machine, and then it will come back into the mixer, and that's your delay. But then you can route that delay back into the tape machine, and that's how you start to get those really cool feedback loops. Every time it prints to tape, the signal is getting warmer, it's getting more degraded, and it's a really, really cool sound. Now, it's not the most practical thing nowadays because you do have to use a lot of tape. It does actually have to be moving and recording as you do this effect, but it is a really cool thing to at least try once, because I promise once you do it once, you will never take for granted a tape delay plugin. Tape flanging has been around for a very long time, but it is truly unlike any plugin I have ever heard. Basically, when we talk about flanging, there are 2 signals, and the signals are identical, except one of the signals is falling in and out of time with the original signal. And as those 2 timings differ, that's where you get that flanger effect, that sort of like jet airplane sound. Now, we can do this with tape. In fact, that's how it was discovered. The way I do it is slightly different than how it would have been done back in the day, but I think it's a really cool effect. Basically, I send my signal to the tape machine, I record it to tape, and then I combine the 2 signals in the computer. And as the tape speed slightly differs from the digital signal, that's where we start to get that flanger effect. And we can exacerbate this just by putting our finger on the reel as it's playing, and that allows us to predict more where the flange is going to be. creative way I absolutely love to use my tape machine is taking very basic sounds, sending them to tape, and then sampling what comes off of the tape. When you throw it into a sampler and then you play different notes, they all pitch, the note length changes, and the hiss can basically start to sound like an effect. And a really cool way we can double down on this is I like to record at a higher speed and then play back at the lower tape speed, and then that's what I use to create my sample. Now, an absolute essential use that I get out of tape is deliberately saturating a signal. Clipping on tape is a completely different sound than clipping digitally, and it is absolutely so satisfying, especially on drums. One of the most important things you'll get out of having tape in your workflow is the way that it forces you to commit to the sound. There's something really special about having limitations embedded into your workflow. Instead of just endlessly tweaking and making adjustments, you record it, you print it to tape, you feel like you just want to move on from that point. Another thing is the process to recording to analog tape is just slower in general. If I want to record something to tape, I might have to route or patch audio. I've got to set levels. I might record at different levels. I might record at different speeds. Then I got to send it back into the computer and then listen to it. And all of these things just take time. And it's that sort of like break in between the production process that really clears your head and just allows you to breathe for a minute. And it's just a very different thing. I don't necessarily know how to describe it, but it's a very different thing from this digital workflow where everything is just happening on top of each other. And I think sometimes that affects my creativity. I wanted to put these limitations to the test in my last video. I tried recording a song like it was 1976 with the intention of setting limitations to see if it would spark creativity. And I highly recommend you go check that video out if you're interested. But in my conclusion, I felt more satisfied at the end of the mix, and I think it's because of those limitations. Tape isn't just about sounding old. It can be used in so many different ways to spark creativity. In the future, I would love to make a guide on getting started with tape for any of you that are looking to sort of dive into the analog realm, but you're not entirely sure if that sounds like you. Do let me know down in the comments, and maybe we'll make a video on it. If you want to see more things with tape, I highly recommend you check out my last video. That way you guys can see exactly how limitations can help the production process. Hopefully this video has inspired someone out there. As always, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.